Welcome to Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by John Bryce of Football Scoop, Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, and Pete Sampson of The Athletic. And very quickly, Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you because Notre Dame started 0-1 for just the 12th time in the last 50 years. And I wanted to see if off the top of your head you could think of the most successful season. There's an argument made for a
I
couple
can't.
when they were 0-1. There's one famous one and then there's one more.
I'm gonna let you
The
fill
famous
in the
one would be
blanks.
the chicken soup season, chicken soup Cotton
Oh
Bowl,
man,
Joe Montana. They started
yes.
0-1 there, and less famous, but probably a loss that went down in infamy until you found out how good the team was. 95, they ended up going to the Orange Bowl still after losing as a 28.5 point favorite to Northwestern. So those are the two biggest comebacks. I was going to say they've never won 10 games after losing the opener, but that's not fair because they used to play
That
11
was a
games.
that was a very atypical Northwestern team, no
Yeah,
doubt
yeah.
about it.
Seemed a little different when you watched them for the rest of the season than the beginning did. But 0-2 would be much different, as all of us have discussed now ad nauseum. This is what happens when you have a bye week, week two. So we will jump right in. Guys, just got off with 15 minutes of Marcus Freeman. Any takeaways from there before we get into the offensive personnel of A&M, which I think will be Tim Priester's eventual takeaway?
Well, Marcus Freeman said the magic words that I was getting ready to write in the preview is staying in your rush lanes. You have to stay in your rush lanes with Marcel Reed, and I think you're going to create some turnovers if you do that. But if you let him run wild, it's crazy because I mean, Mike Elko said he never considered putting Marcel Reed into the lineup against Notre Dame. The mindset was completely different with Connor Wigman. And then, when they did put Marcel Reed in the starting lineup, he was a run first, pass second guy. And then in the offseason, it was all about getting better, more explosive offensively. According to Mike Elko, they did it in landing some receivers in the transfer portal, upgrading their return game, which was pretty average last year, and then I guess teaching Marcel Reed how to throw the football, and he's done a pretty good job at it up to this point. Could be a different animal though against a Notre Dame team that will probably be very good at staying in their rush lanes and defending on the back end.
And Pete, you mentioned getting to read with four, so we could pick it up from there. What you asked Marcus about what the importance, other than the obvious, of getting there with four people.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of something that he mentioned voluntarily, maybe right after the game. So I took it as like you're telling the guys like, hey, you need to be better in one-on-one matchups. And I was interested if there's a way you can like scheme up rushing four to be better. And he's like, yeah, you can, but it's got to be like 3rd and 8 or longer. And I don't even know if that applies to this game because if you're running a twist or a stunt and Marcel Reed's the quarterback and you sort of vacate an area of the field, he'll probably take off and get 9 yards, which will be incredibly infuriating if it comes to that. But yeah, it's like the pressure with fourth thing I thought was a bit of a disaster at Miami. I counted it as 1 for 17 in terms of pressure when they went that route. And I sort of was digging into the stats of last year on that. And like when they brought 4 pass rushers last year, they got pressured 35.6% of the time. Quarterbacks threw 7 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. So 35%, I'm not a math person, but like 1 out of 17 is not 35%.
Right there, it's
So
right there. I am a math person. It's right on
yeah,
top.
okay. It's
Okay, yep.
so they that is a coach says players need to play better at football commentary on getting pressure with four and like especially the defensive end positions like Boubacar Traore is exempt from this criticism, but like I think they have the material to do it.
For me, yeah, it's those elements. It's also not just staying in your rush lane, but being able to get a little bit more push against the Texas A&M offensive line that essentially is the same size as the Miami offensive line. I think the Aggies average right around 330 pounds a man on their offensive line. We saw Notre Dame, particularly some of its undersized players, really struggle with the Miami offensive line. So I think that's a huge component in this game. I do think if Notre Dame can collapse the pocket a little bit and stand up that A&M line with its front four, they will be, as TP said, ripe for some turnovers. I think you can heat up Marcel Reed and make him give the ball away. The other thing that stood out from Marcus Freeman's Zoom today was his commentary on the recruits that they'll host. And I know that Eric Thomas and Brian Alt have some in-depth stuff on that on the website. But I even had an SEC GM reach out to me this week and say, "Good Lord, everybody's going to that Notre Dame Texas A&M game." So once again, that's not the first time. I like sharing those anecdotes when I come across them because you guys know it so much better than me. You didn't typically have SEC personnel people paying a whole lot of attention to Notre Dame on the recruiting trail, especially from a visitor standpoint just a few years ago, but that has certainly changed. So, as Marcus said, that means we better put on a good performance.
And Tim, before we kind of dig into one more offensive theme, more bad math possibly from Eric Thomas. He warns me, but he believes the list is 70 and
Oh
still more
man.
to come. I remember Matt Freeman said on the call today with Marcus that this is the biggest, possibly the biggest recruiting weekend ever. I would assume 2011 USC was the one prior to that, and I don't think Notre Dame was quite as well polished at pulling off these recruiting weekends at that point. That was also the first weekend with super weird shiny gold helmets and music in the stadium and fumbles that go. That wasn't the first season with fumbles that go back the other way, but that was also a bad highlight of that game.
Tim, as it relates to and Pete, what you're talking about with a four-man rush, Traore and Young and Botello, you guys, you got to get the job done. I mean, you those are the guy, and Bryce Young was really ineffective against
That was
Miami.
odd, I thought, from what we expected. I thought more from would be coming from Bryce Young in that game.
Yeah, and Logan Thomas. I mean, there's four guys right there that are adept pass rushers off the edge, and they got to win. Like you said, I mean, you got to be better at playing football. You got to win more battles. That's what your job is.
I want to go back to something Pete said about the four-man rush. I didn't think we'd go to this, but you mentioned, I think, after the game, you were kind of listing who was in there. They got caught in a four-man rush once with Botello in there on the final drive, and it was an 8-yard rush right up the middle. So sometimes you have to be careful of who you put in. Botello was in the middle of that four-man rush. And Tim, I mean, Traore is the best of them, and we think Young will be the second best at coming off the edge, but maybe KVA is really the guy that should be
Absolutely.
coming off the edge of these situations.
Sneed and KVA are, yeah. I mean, okay. So we just named six guys
Yeah, yeah,
that should be adept as pass rushers, and they went head to head with Miami's offensive line. They lost. Now they're going
right.
against another quality offensive line. I wanted to check the
You had
sack numbers
A&M.
against them, but
You had A&M number one, and I figured Miami was number one. But we'll hope that I was right going into because that would be a difficult performance. But they were that much better.
Utah State had two sacks against them. UTSA had zero. I can't vouch for how Utah State got their two sacks, but this is a. I mean, the other thing I'm wondering is, you know, their running backs, Moss and his
Owens,
backup Reuben Owens.
Owens.
Those are two guys that are coming off some fairly significant injuries, and I don't think that they've looked up to the task. Like, you immediately say, oh, well, the offensive line didn't play well. A&M fans are bitching about their offensive line the way Notre Dame fans were after game one against Miami. There's no doubt about that. But in the case of A&M, I'm not sure Moss and they've been very careful with them. They've had fairly limited touches. I guess you could look at Notre Dame's stat sheet with their running backs and say, wow, they don't run them much. But I think in this case, it's them they want to make sure, especially with those first two opponents, that those guys were healthy and ready to go against Notre Dame. I'm not sure that they were where they wanted to be health-wise and just running 100% in the first two games.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Bryce about this with Moss and Owens because I don't. You and I talked. Never would have thought just 25 carries combined because you're putting a lot on Marcel Reed in the first two games against opponents. You don't have to put a lot on Marcel Reed. You wouldn't think. Priester, I took a quick look. They only Pro Football Focus only dinged A&M for one sack. They must not have counted one of them, and it's on Amari Daniels, the halfback. So maybe there was some type of blitz there because apparently a lineman has not been beaten for a sack yet in that one. But Bryce, back to the running game, I would think more from those two as if they're healthy, as Priester pointed out.
Yeah, and I know Mike Elko was on the SEC teleconference yesterday saying that Reuben Owens was in good shape and back probably to full speed earlier than anticipated because Texas A&M had made the decision fairly recently to hire its own full-time physical therapist just for the football program. That was a Mike Elko directive, and he felt that they were already seeing the immediate benefits of that new medical staff addition.
Priester, before we switch to defense, or guys, before we switch to defense, I want to read a question that was going to be for segment two, but Tim Priester asked it of Marcus Freeman, and so did Clear Screen 25. A&M does not have a starting wide receiver over 6 feet tall, but they have speed and shiftiness. How does this impact coverage? Do you expect ND's corners to emphasize being physical
Oh,
at
I
the
didn't
line of
even see.
scrimmage?
I
Yep,
didn't even.
put it right there in the podcast for
I
you.
did
You
not.
asked Marcus Freeman. Good job.
I did not even see that. But I mean, they don't have a receiver, and those four receivers. I mean, those four receivers. That's Craver and it's Concepcion. Those are the front two. But Bussy, the former running back, and then Bethel Roman, who's kind of overlooked, and he's very fast too. I mentioned about. I really didn't see that question. I mentioned about physicality, and he said, "Well, you can't be too physical with them, or they'll run by you." And I get that completely, but it's like, how do you offset their speed? Because none of them are. I don't think any. I think the max is 200 pounds, and none of them are over 6 feet tall, which means that's what they're listed at. So they're probably smaller than that. I would think that you want Leonard Moore to be physical against, their wideout. You trust him to do that, but I understand where Freeman's coming from that you can't let them get behind you. You just can't. And Reed's got enough arm to do it. Now, is he accurate enough on the deep ball? I think the stats show at least, the limited amount of stats so far. I think it shows that he's not accurate, consistently on the deep ball. But you can't let them get behind you, and they can get behind you pretty easily with that group.
JB, you were high on Concepcion way back in the offseason when that transfer happened, I recall.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a big time player. Notre Dame's seen him firsthand when he was en route, I guess, to like freshman All-America status or whatever it was. So he's a playmaker. He's very dynamic, and he has proved that he's willing and able to catch the ball in traffic. And I think sometimes you think those undersized guys, maybe they're not the toughest guys. Concepcion, at least to this point, has proved that he is very willing to catch the ball in traffic over the middle of the field with defenders around him in the end zone. He's made a number of catches like that.
Pete, defensively, since the last time Notre Dame fans saw Texas A&M, major change of the defensive line, but I forgot about this, even though I've read about them and watched them. Back seven was basically intact from when they played Notre Dame. That's an interesting dynamic going in for something maybe we haven't talked about much with CJ Carr's second start and a unique pressure being 0-1 at home in a home start.
Yeah, I mean, their back seven is back, which means I think all 16 missed tackles on Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love are probably back. So, yeah, I am not real high on A&M secondary. I don't know if Notre Dame is mature enough offensively to exploit that. Just because we're talking about start two for CJ Carr, and the offensive line has some stuff to get figured out. But I would press the issue so much with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, not just as a response to Miami, but because I want to see if A&M secondary can tackle. But I don't want to see them try to tackle Will Pauling. I want to see them try to tackle Jeremiah Love. So that I think is kind of maybe an understated key to the game, or part of the game that is worth tracking, is like, how many times can Notre Dame get a running back heads up on an outside linebacker? Like, even, was it Torian York?
Yeah.
I didn't think he played very well against Notre Dame last year. So I think even their linebackers are worth having a conversation about, of whether you can find an advantage there in a one-on-one situation.
Yeah, and York is a captain for the Aggies, and he's a NFL draft prospect. But I'm like you, Pete. This could be, they need to get Jeremiah Love the ball for sure. But I think this is a game where Jeremiah Love could be a difference maker in the throw game for Notre Dame. Like, I would like a matchup that gets Jeremiah Love pitted against somebody in their back seven.
Corey York took a very bad angle to Jadarian Price last year, and Price made him
On the
pay big
touchdown.
time. Yeah, I don't like. I kind of got the impression that he didn't quite realize how fast Jadarian Price was. He didn't have a whole lot of film to build off of at that point. I still think Torian York's a good football player, and Scooby Williams, is a ball hawk too. Their secondary, Pete, I understand where you're coming from. I've seen some film of. I really like Marcus Ratcliffe, number three, who's a safety. And I thought, during the summer when I saw Tyreek Chappell, their nickelback number seven, I was impressed by him. So, I mean, there's bodies back there, and I feel the same way about their defensive line. When I look at them individually, Deion Hayes, who came from Pittsburgh and then via Colorado, of course, Cassius Howell had the 3 plays, 3 sacks the other day. Albert Regis is the lone returning starter. Like I see names there, it's like, man, I know these names from recruiting, but I don't know that I don't think that this defense collectively has found its cohesion as a group, which would make sense. It's a whole new defensive front. I guess the back seven, yeah, is experienced. But I like Notre Dame's chances against this defense, especially with a line that they just don't have that. They don't have the barriers, the impediments that they had, last year. Notre Dame, I mean, Price and Love combined for 135 yards rushing against them. So I think there's some possibilities here, but you got to block. You got to block better.
Before we wrap up segment one, I think, Pete, you might have already begun this. Name a major or likely advantage for Notre Dame over A&M or vice versa. Yours is the running backs versus those guys in space. Is that your glass half full if you're an Irish backer advantage?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. That's where, and like, I get it. Some people say like A&M has some addition by subtraction on the defensive front. Like they lost a first round pick and 2 second round picks on the defensive line. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what addition you're finding there, but like it's not as good as what they had last year.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah, I like that.
They just rotate too. It's like when
Yeah,
you
they
lose
just rotate
Manti
as
or when you
well.
lose those guys. You just rotate, Tim. It's
Just
fine.
throw them out there.
Yep.
But yeah, I just like that the second level, whether that's a screen pass or like, dare I say it, like a horizontal pass to Jordan Faison that may even be called an extension of the run game. Like I like Notre Dame's matchups in that situation a lot more than I did against Miami, where they couldn't handle the defensive line enough to set that kind of thing up.
Yeah, that's mine. It's a concern, not the same one, but that's my concern is can the offensive line simply handle its business? Because if they can, then I think, as you guys have pointed out, those guys are gone on the defensive line at A&M. I talked with Jeff Tarpley from the A&M site for a while, and he does detailed analysis for them, and he's like, yeah, it's a totally different group. It's a lighter group. They have to cross the
Definitely
face.
lighter.
They have to cross the face of offensive linemen. They can't just to get pressure. They can't just. He went so far as to say he really didn't think they had a true pass rusher, including Howell. With those, although those sacks looked very good, he's like, I still don't feel it has anything to do with like last year's pass rush. So that's a kind of an intriguing way of looking at it. That Notre Dame's offensive line has been on the spot for 12 days. It's going to really be on the spot in 2 more days.
I would have sworn that Cassius Howell was a quality pass rushing defensive end before what happened last week with the 3 sacks. I've been on his. I was on his bandwagon last year. I think he's a good football player. Not that, he's. I guess he's 248, which is a good size for the way they run their front. But it's just not. Again, there are names here. It's like I know that name. I know that name. I know that name from recruiting, but I don't think that they've quite put it all together yet.
With football season in full swing, I've been looking to find the best deal on Notre Dame tickets, both for family and friends, but also as a memorable gift idea. That's why I want to offer the sponsor of today's segment one, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. So whether you're an Irish fan looking for a ticket to this week's home opener against A&M or any of college football's season-defining matchups down the road, SeatGeek has your back. And remember, each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know when you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use Irish10, that's all capitalized letters, and the number 10, for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. 10% off any tickets with the promo code Irish10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. We will be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. This segment of Irish Illustrated Insider is brought to you by Signature Pro Apparel, launching its debut Raghib Rocket Ismail collection, an officially licensed product of the University of Notre Dame. Founded by Notre Dame football and NFL alum Lance Legree, Signature Pro connects sports legends to modern day with timeless polos, quarter zips, and rugby shirts. The debut collection honors Rocket Ishmael, featuring the 1990 Heisman runner-up signature as the main logo, so you can wear your Irish pride past and present. Pre-orders open next week at signaturepro.com, alongside the premiere of a short feature film celebrating Rocket's legacy. Don't miss your chance to own a piece of Notre Dame history. Our first question for segment 2, and I really like this one. I'm going to send it over to JB. Denver Maximus. A QB throws an interception, and the next time out, the offensive coordinator goes right back to the past to get his confidence up. A running back fumbles, and he's benched for the whole game. What's the difference?
Yeah, I'm against that. Like, I don't understand that because they're so careful. Look, I understand making sure the players recognize there's consequence for putting the ball on the ground. Particularly in this situation, I mean, Jadarian Price essentially had 50% of Notre Dame's entire rushing attack on just 6 carries. And yeah, you'll see OCs all over the country, not just Mike Denbrock, immediately have the guy quote unquote get on the proverbial horse, get right back on the horse and throw it. Jadarian Price was very clear this week, like, hey, the football is the program, it's the standard. I can't drop it. I can't drop the program. That's the way we view it. But he hadn't had a fumble all camp, which I had heard, and then I confirmed with him when he visited with us earlier this week. He had not lost a fumble all camp. So, I think that guy's got some equity. It's different. Like if it's a true freshman and he
Right.
fumbles, yeah, you send the message. When it's a guy like Jadarian Price that's played in a lot of big battles for you and had some insanely huge moments for your program, I think you go back to him much more quickly, particularly when you very clearly did not feel like Aeneas Williams could carry the ball for you.
I'd like
Hey,
to point out that very quickly, Pete, that we asked Mike Mickens about what happens when someone gets beat, and they put them right back on the horse too. Cornerbacks get beat, and they are asked to figure it out. As he said, he was asked to figure out his first ever time getting beat, and then he got beat again, and was left in there to figure it out. It's a unique situation.
Yeah, I understand. Like, I guess it's, throwing a pick, there's so many elements involved in that. Not all of them are on the quarterback. If the running back fumbles it, it is 100% on him. There's nobody else is at fault there. Like, if you're off, unless it's like the O line misses and the quarterback has a bad like mesh handoff or something. But like that's not what we're talking about. So I mean, I understand it. I didn't think that he deserved to be taken out for the entire game. But they did do that against Louisville last year, which I think
Yeah.
Jadarian even referenced on Tuesday night. So that's that's the way they want to do it. If that meant more carries for Jeremiah Love, I guess I'd be fine benching Jadarian Price. But unfortunately, that's not what that meant. It
I
meant more
mean,
throws for CJ Carr.
Price strikes me as a very conscientious, mature, level-headed guy. He's always presented himself that way with us. So he's either fooling us or that's exactly who he is. I just don't understand it with Price. And look, it was a bad fumble. We've talked about that. It was a fumble that was just kind of punched out from
hmm
behind that
He
shouldn't,
he talked about it. He said it wasn't like a helmet hit the ball. It was I lost the ball.
yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a really good fumble, but he just had a 30-yard run and he's part of he's part of that 1-2 punch in a backfield that you promote during the preseason leading up to it, and then after a 30-yard run he makes a mistake and fortunately the car jumped on that, right?
Yeah.
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 CJ Carr jumped on that, fortunately he did, and he's conscientious. But I just, in a game like that where it's just like all hands on deck and you need every playmaker you can possibly, find from the sideline, I didn't quite understand it. I didn't think that was the time to be doing that.
Our next question from Kay Beasley. We briefly touched on this. Given Marcel Reed's speed and pocket presence, does this lead to more three linebacker sets on third down, or do you think this could still be more of a 4-2-5 with more Devonta Smith? And he means instead of Carson Hobbs, I believe.
Pete?
Uh, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I think that it will still be a lot of nickel.
Yeah.
You know, I is it more Devonta Smith nickel than Carson Hobbs nickel? I think that's actually maybe more interesting to me than the third linebacker, because I think we may be moving quickly towards it's nickel where we expect run, it's Devonta Smith. It's nickel where it's an obvious pass, it's Carson Hobbs. I wonder if they'll start subbing in that way, although I realize it's difficult to do that on the fly when somebody's playing a tempo. Um, I I've sort of said this on some A&M media this week. Like, if I was A&M, not that I would ignore my outside receivers who are quite good, but I would figure out ways to get my slot matched up with Notre Dame's nickel and see what kind of success I can have there. So I do think this is a sneaky important part of the game.
I don't. I mean, Chris Ash is a 4-2-5 guy, and he's not going to take a nickel off the field and put a linebacker on the field when you have four of the fastest wide receivers collectively in the country. So I don't see that happening. And then additionally, Hobbs is like, we can look at the Miami game and say Hobbs isn't as good as Devontae Smith in pass coverage. But there was a whole month of practices that told the coaching staff that that wasn't true. So, I mean, I still expect Hobbs to be on the field. Again, I don't want to overplay the speed and quickness of these guys, but it's pretty exceptional by most standards. Like your four top receivers are very fast. I don't think you're going to take the nickel off the field and put a linebacker on the field, regardless how good Jaden Osbury is as a nickel.
Yeah, I think you have to try to clutter Marcel Reed's vision as much as possible. He's not a huge guy. He's 6'1". He's listed at 6'1". So as you've noted, TP, sometimes those measurements tend to be rounded up as much as a half inch or more. So I think that Notre Dame trying to clutter his throwing lanes and keeping him hemmed into the pocket has to be just an extreme point of emphasis.
Tim, you mentioned the fast guys. I think a young Pete Sampson will agree with me that the 1993 Houston Oilers had four guys that were that fast. So it's not just Texas A&M.
The Smurfs.
Yes,
See a lot
Mouse
of
Davis
comparison
ran him out
between
there.
Warren Moon and Marcel Reed.
There's a little different. Well, that's probably good that they're not facing that. We have a question similar to that coming up later, but
I'll
first,
take these. I'll
you'll
take these. Too.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead.
It's a double question. First one from Lefty 5258. What's the scoop on alcohol in Notre Dame Stadium? What are the selections and price points? You want that tied in with that
Yeah,
next one, Tim?
well,
Okay,
yeah.
so Aerofan 624. What is the expectation for percentage of A&M fans in the stadium on Saturday? Will this be closer to Cincinnati of 2021, which was bad for Notre Dame, or Ohio State 2023 good?
Uh, A&M fans travel like crazy. And the secondary ticket market this week has been incredibly soft. Prices for this game have plummeted really for about 10 consecutive days, or really since the loss to Miami. So there's plenty of access on the secondary market. Even some tickets starting to sell below face value, I believe. So um, it will depend on how much A&M fans decide they want to travel. But the access is there for it to be significant. I don't think it will be like 2017 Georgia, but I think there will be quite a bit of maroon in the stands in terms of alcohol sales. You're looking at spending around $14 to $15 for a 24-ounce beer or a high noon. It's going to be in that price range. Your selections are going to be Guinness, Bell's Two Hearted, Blue Moon, Bud Light, Miller Light, Coors Light. I don't remember if they're serving Bud Diesel or not. I don't remember. It
I
may
don't
be
remember that.
that may be replaced by the Bell's Two Hearted. They might have had the Bud Heavy. I'm not sure, but
What they,
that's it. That's like four beers with a tip. Shane Gillis was like $55 or something.
what they have Saturday night, Pete, at the concert?
I mean, it's the same stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that John said. Like, I think I paid about $40 for two Miller Lights and two waters. But yeah, the beer sales are off. Like, it's its own line, so it's not like you can get food and beer at the same time. So plan accordingly for that. But
One more Pete pro tip. What's the other thing that slows it down, Pete Sampson?
oh yeah, so when you get to the register, the tip is like included. So if you don't want to pay a 15 or 20% tip for your 4 beers that are already really expensive, you have to make sure you press the buttons to not do that.
So what's the deal? So Notre Dame lost to A&M, and so the desire to attend the home opener against Texas A&M diminished because of that? Seriously?
I mean, that's what the ticket market says.
Yeah.
I understand. I think that's pretty shameful.
I mean, I think it's kind of reason. I mean,
That
if
happens
you're coming to
everywhere.
one game and you had to make a last minute decision, I'd still rather go to the USC game.
I
Yeah, I think
always
that
forget the USC game carries so much weight. I mean, because sometimes I'd rather go to the A&M home opener that's
you're a
unique.
regular Lincoln Riley, O'Malley.
Yeah, I forget. I sometimes forget about that rivalry and it means anything. No, but normally like the Caleb Williams game meant a lot, but you could go through some USC games where I'd be like, Texas A&M hasn't been here in 24 years. That
Yeah.
seems like what I would want to go to, but I totally get your point. USC is of course one that makes draws the Irish fans' ire at this point a lot more than the A&M one. So from that point of view, I see it. And here's the problem, Tim Priester. Games are better to watch on TV nowadays for a lot of people. That's what people think.
I guess I get that. I just grew up in that stadium, and just that part I don't get. How you not this feature game against Texas A&M is not a complete sellout.
They will travel well. That was Pete Sampson's first Notre Dame game, right?
It was.
Oh, Pete
That was
highlight show right here. Yeah,
I
that's pretty good.
yeah, I sat in the student section with my girlfriend who was a first year law student and didn't wear sunscreen, so half
remember
of
that.
my face was lobster red and the other half was not.
At least it
times.
wasn't all of it.
Yeah, I had hair back then, so that was helpful.
We have a double question here from Statman72 and Irish GL. Statman asks, given the scarcity of tight ends, do you anticipate a sixth offensive lineman playing in selected short yardage situations? Or will the scarcity of experienced offensive linemen preclude that? I liked his addition to that. And Irish GL says, what player would you like to come in and be a blocking tight end in a goal line situation?
Well, the Notre Dame availability report today notes again that Justin Fisher is out. So that's a guy that I believed could potentially be help in a short yardage situation. What's Ty Washington? We know he wasn't necessarily billed as this super physical guy, although he said like he started at Arkansas as more of a pass catcher and then did a lot more in the run game his next year. And then we saw him again. We didn't see a ton of camp, but we saw Notre Dame using him for some inline block in preseason camp. So, you hope if you're Notre Dame that Ty Washington's wrist is no longer remotely constraining him and that he can be physical and can get in there with his 248-pound frame, I think it is.
I mean, he walked out of practice with a decent brace on his left wrist on Tuesday when we were up there for
You're not
interviews.
supposed to look at that. You're not.
Yeah,
supposed
Pete, did you
Sorry.
see that in John's glasses or something?
Yeah,
Like
it
you
was
looked
a
out there.
reflection.
Okay.
Yeah, using eyeballs and whatnot. But yeah, I wouldn't do this. Like I wouldn't put a sixth offensive lineman. I would like if Justin Fisher was healthy, I wouldn't put him out there. I just don't like the idea of putting out someone who's not a threat to hurt you in the pass game. Like, would you rather have Jaden Grayhouse out there or Jack Larson?
It depends upon the play call.
Well, I'll tell you what. I would change my play call.
Call the plays that relied on Jack Larson to block.
I'm with
but
Pete.
I would love a play call that would got the ball to Jaden Grayhouse.
I really think that the best teams run out of a spread formation with their great running back and their 5 linemen that can block 5 guys, and then the line because that's what the read option is, So I would do that. Now, when Notre Dame had, if you're going to say like, well, their first tight end is Michael Mayer, and their second tight end is Mitchell Evans, and their third tight end is Cole Kmet, then I'm doing different things, but I'm not just shoving tight ends and linemen out there. Yeah. And people always say Joe Alt like it's a guy you just throw out there as a freshman. Just everybody's got a Joe Alt hanging around. I mean, come on.
I mean, if you were going to take an offensive lineman, you'd probably use Will Black, I would think. Yeah. But I don't think we've been given any evidence that they're doing anything like that.
We've never seen him, so he might be good.
He might be. Say it was the same way with Alt. I mean,
who's to rule it out?
We didn't know until we knew.
Who was 45? No, but seriously, Joe Alt, like Like, little, go ahead, JB, you're about to say something, but Joel out there looked a little different when you threw me
Well,
like,
and
I was
Will
just,
Black looks more like a tight end,
yeah,
really, kind of at
yeah.
this stage.
Yeah, well, and we know Will Black, they really like his athleticism. I would just contend like Jack Larson might be perfect in that scenario because you think you're bringing in an extra tight end to block, and he is a very gifted pass catcher. His blocking has to catch up with his pass catching, but Jack Larson was split out wide in high school and has, by all accounts, really, really good hands. So I would just devil's advocate in that regard.
from Glass Half Irish. Guess he's a subscriber because he reads Irish Illustrated too. I know J Love was injured for much of this span, but O'Malley's study on the running game since his 98-yard score bothers me. And please don't just say, well, they face really good rush defenses. I know that, but isn't that the issue since you have to win a championship and face good rush defenses? It's a
Got to
valid
be,
point.
I mean, got to be better. Yeah, you can't just throw your arms up and say you're facing good defensive fronts. You've got to be better. And I like after the performance 2 weekends ago, I'm pretty confident that you're going to see that from this offensive line. And that's where, the knee-jerk reaction after one game, I wrote about a little bit in today's Thursday Thoughts about, coordinators. You can go back and look at Marcus Freeman after one game as coordinator. What'd you think then? Now, and then a few months later, you want him as your head coach. I just don't like that knee-jerk reaction to one game. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, it was a really big game and they didn't answer the bell with their offensive line. But it just has to be better. Tim, you have the numbers on since that 98-yard run on Jeremiah Love. And, some of it was that he was banged up. Some
Oh
of it
yeah,
is they're
yeah,
just not getting him the football often enough.
yeah. And it's I mean, it's part of it is on the O line because if you look at it, so Price didn't get the ball as much in the IU game either, but Price was obviously very good against USC. So Price in the playoffs and Miami, 37 carries, 140 yards, one fumble. He had 4 gains of 10 yards. Jeremiah Love, and he was injured for, you should say most of this actually, but 37 rushes, 109 yards. That's 2.9 a carry. An amazingly glorious TD against Penn State, but no carries in excess of 8 yards. He turned out 4 first downs, including 3 against Penn State. The Jeremiah Love thing is injury related. The offensive line against teams that have good defensive lines and rush defense is offensive line related, and I think that impacts Jadarian Price. I remember before the Ohio State game, because we screamed from the rooftops that Jeremiah Love was injured. We didn't care what Marcus said. We didn't care what anybody said. He was not healthy. Jadarian Price had to have a good game. He did absolutely nothing. They didn't give him a chance. He had like 3 or 4 carries. But they have to find a way to use these two guys because if Love is clearly the best player on the team, Jadarian Price is I mean, I had him as a top 10 player on this football team in college, at least. I feel like this is on the offensive line more than it is on Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. They got to find, and Mike Denbrock, to find a way to get these guys involved more. Even like Ohio State's tough to say because they're so much different, but even like the Northern Illinois game, Jadarian Price had 4 carries. Love had 11 carries. Like when you lose games, you're not getting the ball enough to those guys. That's the last 3 losses. They don't get the ball enough.
I would, yeah. Your story was fascinating. I actually read it this morning when I was looking at something else. I thought it was really insightful, really illuminating. I would point out, yeah, the offensive line. I've been pretty vocal about it. I've said it again on the Football Scoop podcast this week. I don't remember. I still feel that Notre Dame didn't meet the Miami challenge of physicality.
Yeah.
The most significant gap I've seen under Marcus Freeman, because one thing his teams play their asses off. But I would point out that the common factor in all of this is that every opponent also has had more than just a game week to prepare for Notre Dame. So there's extra game planning going in. Now Notre Dame needs to be able to counter that and have its own
Yep.
new wrinkles to figure that they're going to be schemed up pretty well. But Indiana had 2 weeks to prepare. Georgia, I bet you spent the whole month preparing for Notre Dame because it didn't expect Indiana to beat Notre Dame. Penn State had extended time after that, 11 days or so. And then Ohio State had extended time after that. And then Miami had the entire offseason after that. And Texas A&M, to a certain extent, has had a couple of bye games at home before playing. So I would note that, yes, Notre Dame has to be better. I'm not excusing it. The offensive line absolutely has to perform better for what is expected of that unit and what's believed capable of that unit. But I would also add that a significant factor is that opponents have had extra time to scheme up for the Irish
I
during the
think
struggle.
I mean, Notre Dame had the same time. I don't
Yeah.
understand why that's an
Yeah,
issue at
I
all.
don't I'm not grasping that.
I mean, like I think having to stick Tosh Baker on the offensive line has more to do with like why the run game struggled.
Sure.
And Jeremiah Love was totally compromised. But I think like I would
Well,
like to think that Notre Dame staff would use that time to like, hey, we're going to come up with some creative change ups here, and that didn't really necessarily happen.
agree, but also like how much could Notre Dame change it up during that time because they had no downfield, no consistent downfield passing threat like they do now. That's my point. Like they were schemed up. They did what they did well all year long last year, and teams weren't good enough to stop it. When they got to teams with similar talent, it was much tougher sledding because Notre Dame didn't have a four pitch arsenal for Riley Leonard.
Question from Tim, you're gonna love the handle. JF546867.
No, see, that's got to change. That's not.
The question is, what is your guys' take on the substitutions, especially on the defensive side of the football? It felt like versus Miami in big moments, we saw rotational guys taking some reps in place of starters. I know Marcus Freeman and staff are big on getting guys experience, but just an observation I noticed.
Um, I don't want to keep harping on it since I asked Ash, "Are you able to substitute freely on the back end in game number one?" And he said anywhere, and he said, if they're not in there, we don't trust them. So if they're in there, we trust them. I feel like you have to there's a time and a place, and the time and the place is to have your best players in there at the most important times. And I felt like Notre Dame liberally substituted on the back end and in the fourth quarter up front. I want to give them some credit, though. I didn't really notice it during the game. They went to three very large down linemen plus Bryce Young at times to stop Miami's running game, but Miami stayed somewhat efficient. You had Jason Onye, Jared Dawson, Gabriel Rubio, and Bryce Young in there at times against them, so they were trying. Um, I like all these young players. I just feel like you would have done that last year if you had Xavier Watson and Don Schuler on the back end. You wouldn't say like, "Hey, let's get Talip and Stroman some real important reps here."
Yeah, I mean, is this mostly do you guys think a Tay Johnson question? Like
Or a
the fact,
Heinisch question, but I took it as a secondary question more than anything else.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of scrolling through the last drive there. You have Burnham playing defensive tackle with Dawson. But I guess it's kind of a third down package, but probably more Tay Johnson than I would have expected. But I'm not sure that anything happened on that series that made it feel like it was a strategical error.
And do we know? I mean, we don't know if they had to rotate at that point in the game because maybe some guys were dehydrated, or we saw it on
Compromised.
the offensive side of the ball. So we don't know for sure that there weren't necessarily some cramping issues on the defensive side of the ball. And Dawson looked good and fresh
Yeah.
late in that game. That's what stood out to me is that he was an impact and he looked fresh.
I just
And to be fair, sorry, Tim, to be fair, they played 20 against A&M last year, and they played 19, 20 versus A&M this year, 21. It's not that much different.
I, Heinisch is just getting washed
Well, they
away.
played more.
Heinisch was just getting washed away. I mean, I think like you've worked your way through the game and he's not being effective.
Mhm.
You've got to overload it in another direction. Now, and look, like, bench Heinisch, I'm seeing all these things. Just think about things realistically. That's not how the game is played now. Heinisch played some key snaps last year in the playoffs throughout the season. I understand setting him down for a game, but you don't just bench him and give up on him. What are you going to do about your depth then? If Donovan Heinisch isn't playing, where's your depth come on defensive line? Well, throw Mookum in there. Well, if Mookum deserved to be ahead of Heinisch, that would have showed itself on the practice field. So, I just that was one play. Hobbs is a guy that, again, I mean, he's put in a tough situation, and they go at him, and but probably not getting the safety help that he needed on the touchdown, etc. But I will say this: you played a lot of guys, like you said, Tim. They played 20 last year. You had no problem rotating linebackers last year. Um, Maybe
Well,
L Golden did a better job of than what Chris Ash has done up to this point in one game, which happens. It happened to
well,
L Golden and it happened to
to Marcus.
everybody but Clark Lee.
Yeah. Yeah. Bulla did say it was specific to his position, but remember the position coaches are in charge of this rotation. It's not like Chris Ash says I want this to be a Tay Ash or a Tay Johnson and Luke Talich series.
He's
It's
got
that's
enough
the
to worry
rotation.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Bulla just said I'm not playing a fifth unless the fifth is every bit as good as the fourth. And last year they were. That's why they didn't play a sixth, because the sixth was not every bit as good. He liked Preston Zinter. Wasn't anywhere near as good as their fifth guy, so we didn't get to play last year. And so they must think their four safeties, their five, I guess it's four defensive interior guys, right? Because Elijah Hughes came in. Well, think about that, Tim. Like, we're talking about weird substitutions. When Elijah Hughes went in, we were both like, why would he get his first snap on this most
That
important
was
snap of the game? That was weird. That was
that
a
was
little
strange.
strange. Yeah, that's a
That
little
was
out there.
is that desperation? I mean, that kind of
Freshness, maybe.
reeks
Yeah,
of
like JB said,
freshness and
maybe they're cramping. That's
yeah,
possible too.
yeah, yeah. Those are, we'd like to get all the answers to every question, but there's a lot of moving parts out there.
Yeah, I like this one because it is a much different quarterback tonight. This time, BWAC29 asks, Beck was an uber experienced pocket passer that took advantage of the relative inexperience of Notre Dame's defensive leadership on the field. Does the pure athleticism of Reed give the Irish linebackers and secondary a better matchup against a running quarterback, but with less precision in his passing? In other words, is this a better matchup than it was against Carson Beck?
Go ahead, guys.
Mm, I just think it's different. I don't know if it's better or worse. Like if you bust something, I think Carson Beck was going to find it 100% of the time to get you a first down. If you bust something against Marcel Reed, it could be a sack, could be an 80-yard touchdown. I have no idea. Like I think Marcel Reed is much more of a wild card than Carson Beck was. Like I guess put this in floor ceiling terms. Like Carson Beck's floor and ceiling are both high-ish, but there's not much difference between like the floor and the ceiling. Marcel Reed could be all over the place on Saturday night. Like it could be Denard Robinson in 2011. It could be Denard Robinson in 2012. Who knows? I mean, I think it really could
It
be.
cannot be Denard Robinson in 2010, because then it's the end of the world and there's gonna be firings
that
going
actually
on
what I
instead.
meant to
Okay.
say was Denard in
No,
2010.
it cannot be that. It cannot be that.
Yeah, that would be bad news. But I think Marcel Reed is such a wild card. It's hard to say whether that's better or worse. It's going to be better or worse for somebody, but it might be worse for A&M. I don't know.
I think to that's a really good question. I like that.
Yeah.
Also, I would point out it also could not be Denard Robinson right now because he got slapped with a show cause. So I think that's important to
I like
note.
Notre Dame's chances against that Denard Robinson.
Yeah. So he's persona non grata with the NCAA. I do think that,
And at Notre Dame Stadium, if you ever saw that game, by the way, that was
yeah,
something.
I do think that, Beck was going to read it and make the right reads almost every time, and Notre Dame wasn't able to heat him up and make him uncomfortable, and he's better at taking advantage of that than Marcel Reed. I called Marcel Reed a wild card on the Football Scoop podcast earlier today. I think if you keep him hemmed up, he's going to turn the ball over. If you let him, if you break contain, if you're not disciplined, especially on the edge, then all bets are off because he can run it for 35 yards, but he can also pull it up and wing it downfield if you've busted coverage behind your back.
I think this is an interesting question because we were so focused on Carson Beck turning the football over because of what he did last year, but I absolutely believe that Marcel Reed is a greater threat to turn the ball over through the air because he just does not have the eye discipline and the eye experience of facing a secondary like this. And that's why when I asked the question of Marcus Freeman today, and he immediately talked about, pass and rush lanes, it's like, okay, that's exactly the way you need to be thinking. Because if you keep this guy in, if you plug the gaps for him to escape, he's going to make a mistake downfield. And so I think it's a really good question by BWAC29, and I definitely like Notre Dame's opportunities to pick this guy off a couple times.
Dare we say it's a football game?
One of the
Like,
questions One
From
question we
that
had was,
perspective, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
one question we had was name your favorite football reference, but you can only pick one. I didn't include that. I thought that was really well done.
I
And
think
it was from football was his
yeah,
handle.
I think Marcus would agree that there are instances here where football is definitely better than football, so to speak. Question
For my
from Irish Gambler. Do we come out of the A&M game with a better idea of what? Tim, I had trouble reading this actually. Why don't you go ahead and read that?
Okay. Irish Gambler asks, "Do we come out of this A&M game with a better idea of what this team wants to be on what this team really is on offense? If so, what will it be? What do they want to be on offense?" My issue is I'm not sure we'll come out of the A&M game knowing it, but give it a shot, guys.
I mean, I think we know what they want to be. They want to be, Marcus Freeman says it. I believe he says it every week. If not in the media, I know he says it in the Goog. We want to be an O-line and D-line driven football program. I would expect him to say that again this week. Notre Dame wants to run. We wrote about it. We heard Jadarian Price talk about it. They have openly set a goal in that running backs room, and presumably they've discussed it with the O-line. They want to rush for 200 yards a week. Like they want to be able to stretch the field more than they have under Marcus Freeman because they have a quarterback now in CJ Carr who can stretch the field, and they've enhanced their wide receiver corps to give them a chance to further stretch the field. But this is still a team that wants to physically punish you, bludgeon you, and beat you by creasing holes that let especially Jeremiah Love, but also the breakaway speed of Jadarian Price shine.
Yeah, I think they got to show that they have something downfield that's worth respecting. I don't I think that they have it. They haven't shown that they have it. So they've got to show that on Saturday night. They have to, and it's like Marcus sort of joked multiple times about like, man, you CJ Carr would really chuck it deep if you let him. Like, all right, so let's let him. Like,
Well, yeah,
let's see what that looks like.
he threw what one real 50-50 ball, and Malachi Fields made a sensational catch
Yeah,
on it. Like that's what I remember is one. You're
yeah. I
at
don't
home.
count the Reardon one. That was just a bust.
No,
No, yeah.
right. You're at home now. You have to throw more 50-50 balls.
I think Notre Dame should always, to a large extent, be an offensive and defensive line driven program. But in order to get to the next level, you got to push the ball down the field. I have a high degree of confidence that the further along we get into this season, the more that's going to happen with CJ Carr. He's capable of it. Is he going to try to force something downfield along the way that gets picked off? Yeah. But in order for Notre Dame to go to the next level, you should be great running the football. That's how you're built. But to get to the next level, you need to unleash CJ Carr, take advantage of your improved wide receiver core. And I think as the season goes on, that will continue to evolve. And I think it needs to start evolving this weekend against Texas A&M.
Yeah, and I want to not overstate I mean, they have to be more vertical, but that's ridiculous because from compared to the first game. But Pete made a good point, and it's like when they throw horizontal screen to Jordan Faison, that's a weapon. Jordan Faison is effective in that.
Yeah.
You have to be smarter about it. I mean, they threw one tragic one, and a couple other times he made plays. He made some nice tunnel screen plays. That's part of the sport. But if Notre Dame mixes in a CJ Carr who loves pressing the ball down the field 7 times with their current passing game and runs the ball more than they threw screens, that's the offense.
I'd take 3 times.
And I
I
still
want more
think,
than 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
I still think the horizontal screens they were user friendly certainly in game one. I still think they're going to be used to set up a play downfield.
They
Like,
should.
I'm adamant on
Yeah.
that.
They should. And when we say pushing the ball down the field, it doesn't have to be a 37-yard throw.
No, I
It
just
has to
like
be
to
a
see a
17-yard throw.
deep square
I
ends
mean,
are
like
fine,
like
but
like normal passing offenses do. It's not. I
we
mean, it's
we had a lot of
2025
questions
for
about can they just run a toss or do they have to do the stupid fake handoff?
well,
And I didn't do that.
there is something to that. The
Yeah,
RPO,
I
the
know.
read option, there's a reason why everybody does it
Right, right.
because it conflicts, second level guys. So but this, like, good Lord, a 17-yard pass downfield to Malachi Field shouldn't be like a once every half.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, Pete, three's not enough, man. They need 7. Seven's the number.
But it sounds to me like you're setting the over under for the Vegas books on this team.
Yeah, hell, it's gonna be
You're
under, so
bullish.
it's not. Our last question from another handle I disagree with, Troy Murphy Goat. It is Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. post-game pressers in the books, God willing. What are the two things on offense and two things on defense, and throw in some special teams, that let us know Notre Dame won the game against the Aggies? Pete, why don't you take offense?
Offense, I mean, at least 3 deep passes. That's at a minimum.
Three and
And
a
then I
half.
think
3.5. It's got to go
I'll
over.
tell you, this is one. This is a little since the press conference is referenced. Jeremiah Love is in the press conference.
That's a good one.
If Jeremiah
Ah,
Love's in the press conference, Notre Dame won.
that's a good one.
Yeah, he's not coming in if they lose this one. You're right.
That's a good one. Who are you assigning next, Tim?
Defense, Tim Priester.
Well, I'm just gonna now let me do special teams. I'm just
Okay,
gonna
special
repeat
teams,
some of
Tim
the things I've been saying.
Priester.
I'm
Hey,
just gonna
teacher, who do
repeat
you want
what
to call on next? Me? No, no.
I'll answer a different question, not the one you want.
Fine. Two things on defense are going to be Notre Dame no longer has 0 takeaways on the year, and Notre Dame also has somebody in the post-game press because he has sacked Marcel Reed a couple of times and made their life miserable. So
That's
that's
a good
where
one.
I'm at on defense.
That's a good one. I changed my mind. I want to answer defense now. I asked. I mean, just the speed of this group, and we talked about the speed of wide receiver. Well, two of those guys are on returns, and A&M is ninth in punt returns and 15th in kick returns. I realize it's early in the season, but they're legit. They're absolutely legit. And Noah Burnett, I don't think we talked enough about Noah Burnett and what he did last week, and James Rendell as well. Those two guys were very good. Keep that up, man. Rendell was consistent, and Burnett hit the ones that he extra points too. Hit the ones that he needed to hit, and he was right on line. So, but you really, really got to be cautious and not let one of these two speedy guys beat you, because they tore up Texas San Antonio and Utah State.
I think I'll go Pete on Pete's theme of Jeremiah Love making it to the press conference.
That's a great one.
If you see Malachi Fields in there too, in his second Notre Dame game, you know something went right for Notre Dame. Because if you're just seeing Drake Bowen, C.J. Carr, and Billy Schroff, something went wrong.
We
for
could
Notre
probably
Dame.
come up with like
Captain and
worst
yeah.
worst
Worst.
press conference attendees for a loss, best indicative of a win.
Yes,
That'd be a fun thought experiment for a future.
That's a good one to put on sometime. We'll try that for Monday.
You can have a Billy Strother and Ashton Craig if the Irish go out and run for 300 yards.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Billy Trout's the captain. If you just got to
Right,
stick
I
out
know,
three
I
captains
know.
or something,
Ah.
then that's never good. Mike McGlinchey was out there a hell of a lot, and they didn't run for any yards in 2016. He had to come talk to us every week. So, the poor guy. We got to know him really well in 2016.
Yeah.
Only guy that would speak. All right, it is prediction time, and since Tim Priester won't listen if I throw this to him anyway, I'm going to go ahead and throw this one to Pete Sampson first. Every once in a while, John Bryce balks at it. I'm sick of getting people saying no to me. Pete Sampson always answers my question.
One time.
I thought Notre Dame would start 1-1. I realized I picked them to beat Miami. I still think they'll start 1-1, so I have to pick them to beat Texas A&M. I feel like there are potential for some rock fight tendencies from last year. I hope that they don't show themselves because I want to see more entertaining football than that. But Notre Dame 24-16. Marcel Reed definitely is an X factor, wild card, whatever you want to describe him as. That could swing it either way. I think that this is a game where like a more read and react defense actually makes sense for Notre Dame because the quarterback is less experienced and less accurate. And they'll be able to sort of bog down A&M a little bit that way. So yeah, I'll go 24-16. I think it'll probably be it could be lower scoring than that because probably Notre Dame's going to force the issue with the run game. This shortens the game a little bit too. So I go Notre Dame 24-16. All is right in the world, at least for a weekend around Notre Dame.
Yeah, I said ad nauseum in the preseason. If Notre Dame went 1-0, it would go 2-0. It obviously did not go 1-0. I never said if it went 0-1, it would go 0-2. I do not expect Notre Dame to go 0-2. And I think probably more so than fixating on a score, which it's kind of ridiculous that O'Malley does this because then he wants us to write predictions for him. anyway. Like it's a teacher.
Blame the internet, man. They clickety clickety click click when you write those predictions. So
No, I
there's
know that.
yeah.
I'm blaming my teacher, in this case you, Tio, because you're giving ambiguous freaking instructions.
Yes.
But I'm picking the Irish to win. I think it's more. I think there's more scoring than a year ago, and we'll remember last year, both teams were sitting on 26 combined points really late into that game. Really late into that game before it got up to 36 and still very safely hit the under. I think this is a Notre Dame win. I think that we see a frankly very pissed off Notre Dame team that responds with some great physical aggression on Saturday night. And I like the Irish scoring in the 27 to 31 range and winning by about 8 to 9 points.
Pretty sure you're saving yours for
Yeah,
preview.
I will save it. I do think there's a little bit more scoring than last year. Uh, and I do think Notre Dame forces some turnovers. I do. I mean, if you don't force turnovers against Marcel Reed, then you just are not playing good enough defense. And they didn't 2 weeks ago against Miami, but I think that they will. The thing that kind of gnaws at me is that I realized Notre Dame won by 10 last year, but in a lot of ways that game was closer than that. They were losing late to Duke. Um, 2 years ago, Mike Elko coaching Duke. Mike Elko last year. I'm concerned about just the odds of beating a well-coached Mike Elko team 3 years in a row. Um, but I'm also not inclined to think that Notre Dame's going to start out 0-2, especially playing at home, regardless of the fan makeup or whether all the seats are filled or how much the tickets cost, what have you. I think Notre Dame fans are going to show up big time and really provide the support that this football team needs. But you've got to force Marcel Reed to play like the inexperienced quarterback that he is, and I think Notre Dame's defense will do that.
Real quickly, Tio, I just want to add, we did not in game one see riverboat gambler Marcus Freeman in any way, shape, or form. We didn't see any
Yeah.
chicanery from special teams. We didn't see any overly audacious fourth down attempts or anything like that. I think back at home, where Marcus really does a nice job of having the pulse of his team and the pulse of the game, I think we'll see an aggressive Notre Dame team as well as a physical Notre Dame team.
I think we'll see something on special teams as well. I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win and cover, and the reason I'm not going to waffle on that is they've covered 22 of their last 24 they've won. So I think when Notre Dame goes out there, and the ones they don't cover are Miami of Ohio and Central Michigan and those type of things. So
Purdue
that's
next week.
that's over the last 2 years. What's that?
They
Purdue
covered
next
Purdue
week.
last year.
Purdue next week. Oh no, that's
Last
happening.
year
You're
they did.
right. No doubt about that. Well, they are going to be, yeah, we won one though. But anyway, I'm in that 27-20 range. I actually think I kind of feel the way Pete does that there's going to be a slog at some point in this game. You could see like a scoreless quarter, which brings this total down a little bit. I just feel like Notre Dame's going to have a little bit more kick offensively, and A&M's got speed around the field they didn't have. So it's still, I guess they still took it under 27-20. That just feels over to me because this never would have thought that last year. So I'm in the 27-20 range. Notre Dame covering, and they were the best spread team in the history of football last year, and they're about to go 1-1 this year. That's good. Tim Priester, you'll have your actual score on Friday. John Bryce will have his actual score along with his estimate from today on Friday, and I will see if I follow mine. Until then, for Pete Sampson of The Athletic, John Bryce of Football Scoop, and Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching and listening. Irish Illustrated Insider.